All right, welcome back to Athlete's Pursuit. So today we are going to be diving into the topic around supplementation, the role of supplements, and more specifically, how to find the highest quality product as a general consumer. Learn a little bit more about how the industry is regulated and some things to look out for and pay attention to. And to help us with this conversation, we have Wes Barnett joining us today. Wes is the VP of Business Development and Corporate Wellness, and previously for the athletics department at Thorne Health. He was also a two-time Olympic weightlifter for Team USA, earning a bronze and silver medal in the 97 World Championships. And for 17 years, he was the Director of Sports Performance and International Games for the Olympic Committee. So I cannot think of a better person to have join us today for this conversation than Wes. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
How are we feeling today?
You know, we're doing good. We try to live to our life to the fullest. Every day. So I'm feeling good. Happy to be here, and kind of excited for the conversation.
Let's start with an easy one, man. What does a former Olympic weightlifter do to start his morning these days? What do you get into?
You know, it's really that's an interesting question because I had a coworker ask me that. We were on a group call, and it was before everybody had joined, or we were waiting on a few more people, and she's just like, "Hey, what is your daily routine like?" And when I went through it, she goes, "Oh, that's pretty boring. I expected it to be, a lot more exciting." So there's
Like
this kind of persona that's out there, and it's just like, look, I'm at this kind of phase in my life. I'm actually now a grandfather. I've got grandkids, and so the things that I kind of get enjoyment out of now are much different than the things that I got enjoyment out of, when I was still a competitor. But people still kind of put you in that box and think that I'm, out there, climbing mountains and wrestling grizzly bears and all that sort of thing. But my typical day is just kind of, I wake up usually somewhere between 5:30, 6 in the morning, take my dogs for a walk, hit the gym for, a quick 30, 40, 45 minute, just kind of intense, sort of workout. And then, kind of come to work. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of doing things that I enjoy doing, yard work. And I take great pride in having a great looking yard and landscaping, and, basically focusing on things that, when I was a competitor, I totally ignored. I didn't have the opportunity to do. So yeah, I'm just a boring dad. If you ask my kids, and maybe a funner granddad than a dad. But yeah, it's just a typical day. Just kind of going out and doing things that I enjoy doing, and kind of enjoying life and embracing some of the things that I didn't get to do when I was an athlete competing.
Wes, I love that, man. I think that's the dream life, in my opinion. That's what I'm trying to do. I got a dog too. We got a German Shepherd and a little Maltese over here, and I spend so much of my time to relax just by, taking her out for walks or hikes or runs, whatever we're doing together. So I love that, and I'm curious too with your. I was going to ask if you're still training, if you're still like weightlifting, and I'm curious now in your morning routine. What does a typical lift for Wes look like these days, and how has your training evolved since your days in competing?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there was a period of time that I went kind of totally away from the weightlifting and the kind of the anaerobic exercises that I did, and really got into road cycling, and was doing that a lot, and kind of really enjoyed that, and really transitioned my body from an anaerobic athlete to an aerobic. I was a beast, aerobically, which I never thought I would hear myself say. And I just kind of flip back and forth now. I just kind of have this combination of, like, I still do some cycling, not as much as I was doing a few years ago. But what I really like to do, because I just, in my mind, if I'm not kind of in there sweating and panting, and and exhausting I don't feel like that I've had a workout.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's crazy. It's a sickness that I have,
It's
but
like an athletic mindset, I think, right? Like that
that's
performance,
exactly
that
right.
push.
So what I
Mm-hmm.
do is I just kind of go in now, and I just love to do a lot of circuit training, and sometimes that involves the Olympic lifts, and sometimes it does not. But it's basically just multi-joint movements, right? Whether I'm using dumbbells, whether I'm using barbells, or whether I'm just using my body weight. But I like to just kind of do these things in just kind of rapid succession, changing body parts and and different exercises. Kind of throughout the routine, giving myself, a minute or so break in between sets. But like I said, sometimes that's with dumbbells. Sometimes it is with barbells where I'm doing, some sort of combination of, cleans, front squats, push presses, and then, jumping over to, some sort of dumbbell exercise. And then, maybe I'll do that because you can knock out a lot of work in a short period of time. So, I'll do that for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And then I go to the treadmill and, I put it on somewhere between like 15 and 18 miles an hour and elevate it to about 45 degrees. And then I just do sprints, right? So I'll do 10-second sprints, 2-minute rest, 10-second sprints, 2-minute rest. And I'll do anywhere from 4 to 8 sets of that. And in 45 minutes, I'm pretty gassed. I feel like I've done a kind of a complete workout. And then, potentially on the weekends, I may change that up a little bit and go on a 2-hour bike ride. So it really just varies. I like to have a lot of variety because that's the spice of life, as they say, and keep things interesting, keep my body guessing, not knowing what I'm going to throw at it. But it's a little less intense, clearly, than
Right,
it
from
was
right.
back in the day.
Sure.
In Partly in my mind, I enjoy, just kind of that notion of going to what I like to call the pain cave, and just kind of really pushing myself to the limit. But I did that for so long and for so many years. It's like my body reminds me that, hey, I don't want to go back to that place either. So, there's little aches and pains here and there that I think my body uses as almost like a governor to kind of keep me in this lane and maybe at 55 miles per hour versus, trying to get up over 110 miles an hour. So
Yeah,
I try to kind of keep it, reasonable and something that I feel like I'm getting out of without pushing too hard, because I don't need to be injured, and I don't need to kind of prove anything
yeah.
to myself or anyone anymore. So I just kind of do the things that I enjoy and, work up a good sweat and try to take care of myself that way. But it's important that I do throw some of the lifts in because I want to keep the mobility and, in all my joints because I like to hike. I like to, like I said, go out and work in the yard. And, I feel by doing the exercises that I do, it allows me to continue to be able to do the things that I enjoy doing.
Yeah. That's everything, isn't it? I mean, it changes into the long game. Love the mention of the pain cave, though. Great place to visit every so often.
Every so often, it's fun to kind of go back there. And I think if you do it, like you said, every so often, you can get away with that. But I mean, when I was competing, man, I did things to myself that I think back now, and I'm like, I don't know how I survived it, but I I just had this mentality, and it was the same thing, when I kind of got into road cycling. I just kind of enjoy pushing myself and doing things at levels that other people won't dare to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just to say that I did it. And a lot of times it's just kind of to get a response of the people that I'm with to say, you know what, you are crazy. And that just kind of fuels me a little bit, and knows that, all right, I still got it. And but I'm very selective. I pick and choose those moments for sure.
Wes, you're getting me fired up over here a little bit, man. Ready to run through a wall right now. No, this is awesome, man. I love the longevity. And now I'm curious too, like what So you get into pro weightlifting, which is had to be such a wild journey in and of itself. But I'm kind of curious where this started for you, Wes. Now that we're talking about this, like, when did you pick up your first weight? When did this start to happen? Where you're like, I really enjoy strength training, and kind of a key moment where you decided to really pursue weightlifting at the highest level. Where did this kind of begin for you?
Well, as a kid, we didn't have all of the sports available. I don't think, like, at least in my world, right where I grew up. I grew up in a town, St. Joseph, Missouri. We're about 30 minutes north of Kansas City, and we had the typical. There was no soccer. I didn't know about tennis, no lacrosse, anything like that. It was the basic baseball, basketball, football that I played as a kid. And where I was really fortunate is there was a youth center. Ironically, it was called the Wesley Center. Um, and people think that it was named after me. It was not. It was named after John Wesley, the Baptist, and it was like this kind of faith-based kind of community center. And we would go down there, and it was literally probably about 3 or 4 blocks from my house. So I could jump on my bike or I could walk, and that's where I spent a lot of my childhood years, just kind of hanging out, playing basketball, shooting pool, air hockey, table tennis. I mean, that was the thing to do. There was nothing to do, kind of in the neighborhood really. So that was kind of where a lot of us would congregate and just kind of hang out and play sports and excuse me, have fun together. So one day we're in the gym playing basketball, and the youth director came in and he said, interrupted our game. He says, "Hey, we're having a weightlifting meet today. You have two choices. You can lift or you have to go home." All right, well, don't want to go home. So I was taught how to do snatch and clean and jerk about an hour before the competition started, and participated I didn't know, really what I was doing. I was halfway doing it correctly or whatever. And, put some weight on there. I think I had snatched like 25 kilos. And for those that aren't in the game, it's about 55 pounds, and clean and jerk like 35 kilos or about 75, 77 pounds. And ended up in my first competition. I got fourth place. And people are like, "Wow, that's pretty good." But then I layer on the back end of that, which is there were only 4 people in my weight class, so I was dead last. Because I saw you shaking your head. Hey, that's pretty good.
That's not
Dead
bad.
last, I was, but fourth sounds better than dead last.
It does.
And then the coach is like, he was the youth director, the weightlifting coach. I mean, he wore all the hats, and he says, "Hey, what I'm going to do is this fall we're going to." I'm going to train whoever wants to train. And then in the spring, we're going to have another competition. And those who can qualify, we're going to go to the Junior Olympics in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh wow.
I was like, wow, that's pretty cool because, in my town, at the time, it's like most people never left, right? And you never really kind of saw anything outside of the city that you lived in. And we were on the one of the poorer sides of town, and to have this opportunity to go somewhere outside of my hometown was something that was really appealing to me. And I was 12 years old at the time, so trained, competed, qualified, and there were 4 of us that qualified. And the coach and his wife and myself and my 3 teammates, we loaded up a station wagon, drove from St. Joseph, Missouri, to Jacksonville, Florida, and competed in the Junior Olympics, the AAU Junior Olympics. So I was, at the time, I lifted in the 104-pound weight class. I was the proverbial 99-pound weakling. I weighed in at 99 pounds. And in that competition, what did I do? I think I snatched like 99 pounds. I snatched my body weight and clean and jerked like 125, 130 pounds, somewhere in there. And I won my weight class. And I also won. There's a what's called the Sinclair formula, and it's a coefficient that has every body weight, and then there's a coefficient attached to every single body weight, and you multiply that by the amount of weight that you lift, and that's how they determine pound for pound who was the best lifter. So I won my weight class, gold medal. I won the best lifter for all athletes who were 13 and under. Even though I was in the lightest class, my coefficient was higher than all the other weight classes. And because it was my first AAU Junior Olympics, I also won the Rookie of the Year award. So here I am, this kid from small town St. Joe, Missouri. I come out with, a gold medal for my weight class and a trophy. I get a trophy for best lifter, and I get this giant trophy for Rookie of the Year. And I'm thinking, wow, nothing could be better than this. And I stuck with it for about the next 17 years. Now, I played sports through school. I stopped playing football when I was about a sophomore. I stopped playing baseball when I was about a freshman. And I continued playing basketball. I was an all-state basketball player in Missouri. And when my senior year came, and I lifted weights all through, middle school, through high school. And when I finished high school, it was a pretty easy choice for me because I was better at weightlifting than I was any other sport that I was playing, and kind of saw that as the path that I wanted to go down. So I just, like I said, continued with the sport and ended up competing for about 17 years.
Wow. Literally throwing it. Well, I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, I think
right
life has a way of kind of directing you and guiding you, and really it's about what was I having the most fun and enjoyment doing. I had a lot of success as a lifter, and I was traveling, so for me it was easy. I enjoyed doing it, and now it was a question of like post high school, what opportunities exist for you. So it just so happened that in Overland Park, Kansas, there's a community college there, Johnson County Community College. And a friend of ours, his name was Mick Yasko. He was the athletic director, and his son Dirk was a weightlifter, and happened to be, at the time, he was like the youngest athlete to ever win the senior national championship. So it's really the national championships, because when people think of senior, they're thinking, oh, these are old people. But back in the day, it was called the senior national, which just meant you weren't a junior. So it was anybody over 20 years old. And he was the youngest kid to have ever won that at the time. He was like 16 years old when he won. And he was a weightlifter. And like I said, his dad, Mickey, was the athletic director. So he hired a Hungarian coach named Steve Javorek to be the strength coach for athletics there at the college. But really why he hired him is because he had a weightlifting background, and he wanted this kind of high level international coach for his son Dirk. So that program was going on. And then after high school, I went to Johnson County and kind of trained under Steve Javorek. And after a couple of years there, went back home to my hometown, spent a semester there with my hometown coach, Dennis Sneathen, and then got a call from the folks at US Weightlifting that they were starting or restarting a resident program out in Colorado Springs. So got the invitation and moved out to Colorado Springs to join the resident weightlifting program, where we would live and train year round at the Olympic Training Center. So I left St. Joe in December of 1990 and have been out in Colorado Springs ever since, but spent about a decade living at the Olympic Training Center under the resident coach there, or the national coach there, Dragomir Churoslan. He was a Romanian Olympian, bronze medalist in 1984 in weightlifting. And we just had this kind of, tight-knit group. We started with 6 people, 6 athletes, and we were just kind of in there banging it out, and the program kind of grew from there. But it was a real fortuitous road that I was on, that, in starting lifting with Dennis, it was all about building a foundation. In continuing with Steve, it was about continuing to build on that foundation. And then by the time I got to the Olympic Training Center, I had this foundation where I was ready to kind of be thrown into the meat grinder, so to speak, to handle the, kind of the volume and intensity that now
Mm.
I was going to be introduced to at the Olympic Training Center, going from training, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and one time on Saturday to 6 days a week, twice a day.
Mm.
But my body was ready for it because fortunately I had coaches in the beginning that were concerned about my long-term development and my long-term progress versus how much can you lift, right now, and trying to kind of get me, to lift heavy weights from a young age, and get to the point where maybe I'm injured or plateaued. So
Yeah.
it was just, I've just been blessed with the people that have been in my life to kind of help guide me, and fortunately had had a very long career. Never had a surgery, never had a broken bone. Never had like a severe injury that kept me out for any period of time. So
That's incredible.
I've just been blessed to have a lot of great people around me.
That's incredible, Wes. I mean, the right team, the right people, the long game, especially at that day and age. I feel like, there's been so much research and knowledge around strength training coming out of recent years, but especially back then, to have such incredible guidance, and to set you up, and the support that you received takes us to where you started to help other athletes, right? So you get into the Olympic committee, and now you're doing exactly that for everybody else competing. And I want to dive into that with you, because you had 17 years in the Olympic committee now, where you were helping, supporting athletes. And this is where I want to start talking about specifically how you were helping them with supplementation. So your years of experience, all this expertise that you've gathered, what was your role really with athletes that were competing during your time in the committee, and how were you supporting them in regards to finding the right supplements for them to use to compete?
Yeah, it's really interesting because my main job was um, really evaluating plans for each of the sports that I worked with. They're called NGBs, or national governing bodies, and those are your swimming, your weightlifting, your wrestlings, your track and field. So in the beginning, the Olympic Committee used to give out grants based purely just on your Olympic team size. So if you had an Olympic team size of 15 people, there was a formula, this much money times 15, and that was the grant that you got every year from the committee. And what we saw was this trend of performance going down, 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 because there was no accountability for the money that you were getting. They were spending it however they wanted, and there was kind of really no accountability.
Mm.
So after I had finished my career and went to work for the committee, we implemented more of a performance focus, meaning you had to demonstrate, okay, this is where you're at now. This is where you're going to be at the next games in 4 years. Show us the plan of how you're going to get there. Has to be realistic too, and that was a lot of sorting through the fluff, but show us how you're going to get there, the resources that you need: psychology, nutrition, strength and conditioning,
Mm.
biomechanics, etc., psychology. Show us the things that you need, show us what you can pay for, and then show us what it is that you need us to pay for. And we would have this kind of dialogue back and forth, and ultimately land at a place that said, all right, here's what we're funding. Here are the resources that we're giving, which could include access to the Olympic Training Center. And every year we're going to evaluate how we did, and we can adjust plans and tweak plans. But ultimately it was, at the end of this, we have to be showing progress, that you're moving towards the podium if you're not already there. So how do we get athletes who are in the top, 15 or 20? How do we get them to the top 10? Athletes who are in the top 10, how do we get them to the top 5? Athletes that were in the top 5, how do we get them onto the podium? So it was real intense like that, and did that for a very long time. And then we got to the point where I started seeing athletes who I know 100% they weren't trying to cheat. right? Supplements are a big part of sport. And the message at the time was, don't risk it. So don't take any supplements. And,
Mm.
and that's really not a solution, right? That's really not something that, is going to kind of help athletes and support their performance. But because the industry is such a shady place, and there's a lot of bad actors out there. It was like, hey, the only way that you can really be safe is to not take anything at all. So I felt that wasn't acceptable, and didn't really, especially when we knew that athletes were taking supplements. So nobody wanted any liability. So Joe, if I say, hey, here I am, this representative, here at the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and I'm going to tell you what to take and where to get it, and then you end up having a positive drug test, the liability all comes back, onto the committee, which nobody wanted. Um, my position was, well, if we know they're taking supplements, and we know they're out there just kind of wandering this minefield, blindfolded in many cases, I said, isn't it equally as bad that we're not doing anything to help them find a source that they can trust?
Yeah.
And I was really adamant about this because, look, I came from a sport where, in weightlifting, where people, they intentionally, cheat, right? They're intentionally taking things to kind of enhance performance. Where in this other kind of space, we just needed help with supporting performance, right? How do I fuel? How do I recover? How do I kind of, because I'm pushing my body to the absolute maximum. Now, how do I recover and take care of myself in such a way that I can do that today and then come back and do it again tomorrow and then do it the next day without destroying myself? So we knew that supplements played a major role, and we knew that you can't get everything that you want, out of food, because you're redlining it all of the time. So they said, look, if you feel that passionate about it, then, go find a solution. All right. Challenge accepted. So I went and I started visiting supplement companies. I was calling supplement companies. I was getting, and I didn't know, really what I was doing. And I didn't have a nutrition background or any sort of science background, that could help me deliberate, and distinguish between what was good and what was bad. So I enlisted the help of some of the sport dietitians, that were working there, with me. And, again, I'm getting stuff delivered to me. I'm taking things myself. How does this make me feel? Hey, can you read the label? Let me know what's in here. And we kind of went through this, and it was literally about a 10-year odyssey, that I was on. And there was absolutely nobody that I could find that was doing what I felt needed to be done to kind of keep athletes safe.
For 10
And
years.
just about the time I was about to give up, a friend of mine said, hey, I have a friend who's interested in sports psychology. Can you sit down and talk to her and kind of tell her about, the internship program that we have at the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and kind of see, just give her information, about it and how it's used, with your team and all this. I'm like, well, sure, I'll have a meeting. So typically, Joe, what happens is, when I have a meeting, we've got a bunch of different meeting rooms on the floor, of our headquarters, and just ironically, that day there were no meeting rooms available. So I'm like, all right, well, we'll just go in my office and meet. So we have this meeting, and after it's over, she's like, really, thank you for that information, and if I could ask you a question, what is the deal with all of those supplements? Because on this bookshelf behind me, from floor to ceiling, was nothing but supplements and literature and brochures and boxes and bottles. And she goes, what is the story with that? And I told her, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, trying to find this solution for athletes so that they can be safe, because we're having athletes who are failing drug tests from contaminated supplements, not because they were trying to cheat. And I wanted to try to find a solution. Was there a company out there that could, really help them and guide them by doing all of the testing and getting the certifications and kind of being a beacon for the athletes, so that they can look at a label and have peace of mind that the stuff has been tested, the stuff works, and the stuff is not going to make me sick or anything. So she's just like, well, you have to meet my boss. I work for this company called Thorne, and I'm like, never heard of you, and let me tell you, I've been looking for 10 years high and low. So if I've never heard of you, you must be some kind of fly by night, ridiculous company. So I was really pessimistic at this point. And she goes, well, you've got to meet my CEO. And I'm like, all right, fine. So within a week, the CEO of Thorne at the time, Paul Jacobson, flies to Colorado Springs, and I go to lunch with him. And again, I'm sitting here very skeptical. I'm very pessimistic at this point. And he's just like, here's what we do. We're the only supplement company that collaborates with Mayo Clinic. We collaborate with them on education and research. And he went through this whole spiel of how great they were and the quality and the efficacy and all these things. And I'm just still sitting there with my arms folded. And when he was finished, I'm like, okay, I've just got one question. If you're so great and the company is all about quality, and why is it I've never heard of you?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's easy. The company started in 1984. And for about the first 25 years, they only made supplements for doctors. So if you didn't have a doctor that knew about Thorne, you couldn't get the products. They weren't for sale at retail. And of course, at that time, the internet didn't exist, but you couldn't buy them anywhere except through your doctor. And then the light went off for me. So I'm like, okay, so you're making these products for doctors. Yeah. And he went through all of kind of the testing and things that, that Thorne did. And I'm like, wow, this really has some potential here. So about that time, and he and some others had purchased Thorne in about 2010. So at that point in time, that's when now this was becoming a little bit more commercially available. It still wasn't big in the athletic space yet, because they really hadn't fully launched into the sports space. And this was a couple of years before Rio. So this is about 2012, 2013, we had this conversation. So what happened was I went back and kind of told my boss that, hey, I think I may have found a solution for the athletes. This company, they do all of this testing. And essentially at that time too, like this NSF certification was kind of just coming on. Okay. And a lot of the companies that I'd went with before, they just saw dollar signs, right? It's like, oh, an opportunity to work with Olympic and Paralympic athletes, it's dollar signs, and it's really going to help elevate our brand. And we're willing to conform to do whatever it is that you need us to do to kind of meet your requirements. Thorne, on the other hand, was the only company that part of their everyday business, they were already doing all the things that I wanted them to do, and they were doing it at a level beyond my wildest expectations. The only thing that they weren't doing at the time was NSF certification, because they weren't in the sports space, so there was no need to have an NSF certified product. But when we told them kind of what we needed this kind of extra layer of safety and an extra layer of assurance. They assured us that, yeah, that's no problem. If that's what's needed, then we'll do it. So for the next 3 years, we went through this kind of due diligence process where we went out to their plant. We looked at their operations. We looked at the people involved with the company. We checked everything out from top to bottom. And it was so intense, really. And we had at the time this this person that worked at the Olympic and Paralympic Committee in risk management, and this was a guy who could find something wrong with anything, right? So if Jesus, kind of descended from heaven, he would say, "Oh, well, look, his the robe that he's wearing, it's frayed at the bottom, and he's got his long hair, it's got split ends, and his fingernails are too." He could find something wrong with anything. So we go out to at the time we were at Sandpoint, Idaho, and so we go out and they show us the process, how they separate raw materials and how they test it, how they do a kind of batch testing throughout the manufacturing process, and the cleanliness and the quality, and how they reject raw materials that don't meet their standards, and all of these things. So at the end of the day, I go to the risk management guy and I said, "Hey, can you tell me what you think? What do you think about them?" Because I knew he would have some kind of something negative to say, or some sort of critique, right? And he goes, "If they're going to do everything that they say they're going to do," he goes, "from what I see, I have no reservations in recommending them." And he goes, "I even like broke off during one of the tours, and I went down the hallways and I was looking at the expiration dates on the fire extinguishers, and they were all kind of compliant and up to date." So, he was a little bit frustrated because he's like, "I can't find anything wrong." And then that for me was like, all right, we are really getting somewhere now. So after those years of due diligence, we couldn't, as the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, do a sponsorship with them because there was a conflict already in that category. But what we were able to do is let the NGBs know that we think we have found a solution, and you should really check them out because we've done 3 years of due diligence, and we find them to be the real deal. My whole goal was, let's give athletes peace of mind. They look at the label, they don't have to think about anything else. So I'm like, well, there are things that we need on the sport line that you guys aren't currently making. And we've got Rio staring us in the face. So, we don't know what we can do. They stopped their entire manufacturing process with all their other products and started manufacturing, because we gave them a list of about 12 products that were, that our dietitians came up with, that said, these are the kind of the main products that we recommend, and the deficiencies that we see. So they stopped all production and then did a sport only batch production to have products in time for the games in Rio. And I was just like, wow, that was pretty impressive. So we had about 12 NSF certified for sport, which means they're guaranteed to be free of banned substances, ready in time in the lead up to Rio, and for the athletes to have with them. So that also spoke to me, like, these guys are really serious. It's not about the dollar signs. It's really about protecting athletes. And the dollars will come later, right? By doing the right thing and doing the right thing at a level that nobody else is doing it at.
Yeah.
The dollars will come later. But what they were really concerned at was, let's give these athletes something that they can have confidence in, and that they're going to be protected. Because when you have a false, or not a false positive, but when you fail a drug test, your life and career are turned upside down. You're labeled as a cheater. Kind of people look at you strange, and you really don't have the resources to fight it, to say this was a contaminated supplement. And even if you were to prove that, by the time you got to that point, you had bankrupted yourself, and there was really no recourse. So this was something that I was really, really excited about. And for me, it was the culmination of this kind of long 10-year journey to finally get to a place where I felt the athletes had peace of mind.
Which is a huge thing. I mean, like you're saying, you want, as an athlete, you just want to focus on your training. You don't want to worry about what I'm taking is going to potentially eliminate me for competition for something that I was unaware of that I was even doing, right? This isn't, like you said, an intentional act. It's more to do with the manufacturing process of cross-contamination, which is really just a process in the manufacturing process of, are you cleaning in between production runs so that products are not crossing unintentionally and getting in a supplement that's not supposed to be in the ingredients, just, that type of thing happening. And I want to unpack this too, Wes. I got two follow questions with you
Sure.
here. Understanding that Thorne is coming more from like a medical grade. It's like a clinical side of things. And then we're getting into sport, which we'll dive into. But you also mentioned that in the manufacturing process that Thorne would essentially bypass or through their QC process, they would remove certain goods into their production line, right? So as you're getting a raw material, walk us through that a little bit. You're going through the QC process, you get this raw good, maybe it doesn't meet the standard of Thorne. So what happens to that product that's not being used?
Yeah. So raw materials come into to Thorne, and they're immediately put in a quarantine area. There's a certificate of analysis that comes from the raw material manufacturer, and we take that certificate and we set it aside, and then we retest the raw materials ourselves. If they meet our standards, great. They can be, kind of moved on to the next step and used in the manufacturing process of whatever that raw material is for whatever products that we're making. But if it doesn't meet our standards, which about somewhere around 12% does not, we reject it. To which the raw material manufacturer is like, well, wait a minute, why are you rejecting this? This meets our standards. And it's like, well, it may meet your standards, but it doesn't meet our standards. So in other words, good enough isn't good enough. And what happens with the raw materials that we reject because it doesn't meet our quality standards, it's then turned around and sold to other companies who are quite happy to kind of use it in their manufacturing process because their quality controls and quality assurance, those standards aren't as high as ours at Thorne. So what we basically reject and throw out, other companies are out there scooping it up, literally and figuratively, to kind of use in their manufacturing process because it's in their eyes, it's like, hey, it's good enough. People are going to buy it anyways, and it's more expensive to do things the right way than it is to just kind of do things in some sort of half-assed manner. And they count on the general public not being knowledgeable enough to know the difference between a good company and a not so good company, a good product and a not so good product. So they rely on that. And, in this space, unfortunately, Joe, marketing triumphs science. So if you've got, a cool label and you're doing a bunch of these kind of, television commercials, and you've got, spokespeople that you're using to kind of help elevate your brand, people who probably don't even take the product themselves, but you're writing them a check to say nice things about you. That's kind of what this world is. And what we try to do, it's like the Wild West. And we have one guy in our company that says, and we at Thorne, we try to be the Wyatt Earp of the Wild West and try to bring some sort of law and order or some sort of standard to the industry. And that was something that, impressed me from the very beginning with this company and still impresses me to this day now that I'm inside and kind of seeing all this stuff with my own eyes.
This is something that to your point, Wes, before I really dove into this and did my research on Thorne myself and started to really dig into this industry, as a general consumer, you're right. I had no idea. I think you come in with an assumption that when you're buying a supplement and you see it in a retail space or at any type of store, you assume that there's a regulation over this stuff, that there's a regulatory agency overseeing the quality at the highest standard, similar to like an FDA in pharmaceuticals, right? That there's testing going on to make sure the efficacy of the product at a very high level. But from what I'm understanding and what I've learned is, and let's dive into this, Wes, what are the regulations or the regulatory agency over the supplement industry? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that the supplement industry is is not regulated at all, which is not true. There's the FDA, there's some regulatory bodies that are out there that look at quality from the standpoint of making sure that this isn't something that's going to make you sick, and something that's not going to kill you, right? So as long as people aren't getting sick from it, as long as you're not out there, and then the FTC is there to really look at like these crazy claims that supplements don't treat, prevent, or cure anything, right? They don't do that. So when companies are out there making these outlandish claims, that's a red flag in and of itself. But the FTC that's their job, is to squash that out and really enforce that. The FDA, they're on the quality side, but again, it's a low bar, right? So it's like our raw materials. Like every bit of raw materials that come through our door, could almost guarantee you that the FDA would say, yes, this passes our quality. But Thorne holds itself to a higher standard, right? So while it may pass this quality here, and that's what a lot of companies do, hey, yeah, FDA said it was good. And there are audits that take place to make sure that you're doing things in an appropriate way. Again, so people aren't getting hurt, people aren't getting sick and that sort of thing. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't address the efficacy. Does the product actually work or not? It doesn't address all of the things like at Thorne. I think it's something like, it's well over 600 herbicides, pesticides, pollutants, toxins, heavy metals, things that we test for. So we want the product to be kind of safe to take as well, right? Very safe, not put banned substances away for a second, but we want it to be safe, right? Healthy for you to take. And then there's the banned substance part. So even with NSF and their certification, they'll verify that there's no banned substances in there, but they don't verify that it's healthy, and they don't verify the efficacy. So these are things that we use our Mayo Clinic relationship to do, because with this research collaboration that we do with them, what we do is we look at our products and we test our products, and we test our products against the label claims that we're making. If we're saying, hey, this is going to support brain health or gut health or joint health or whatever, the research that we do is either going to validate that or it's going to invalidate that. If the research invalidates it, guess what? We go back to the drawing board. We don't put that out on the market. We go back to the drawing board to figure out, why it's not working. And we continue to tweak and retool formulations until we get to the point where it has been validated. Then we can take it to the market. But it's a tricky place out there, because most consumers think that all supplements are created equal. So when I go to the grocery store or the vitamin store, and I look on the shelves and I see, my doctor told me that, hey, I need to take vitamin D because I've got a vitamin D deficiency or an iron deficiency or whatever the case may be. And you're going as a consumer to the shelves and you're looking and you see 8 different bottles of vitamin D. And you're like, okay, well, they've all got to be the same because they all say vitamin D. I'm looking at the back. Oh, yep, vitamin D. And their go-to is, well, I'll just do whichever one is the least expensive. Now, they have no idea about the quality of the raw materials. They have no idea about the absorbability. That's the other piece of this, is like the products that you're using, is your body actually absorbing, right? Is it kind of uploading and utilizing these things? And the unique thing that Thorne does in this space as well is the research that we do is on our products. And here's what I mean by that. And I'll just stick on vitamin D. You can go to Wikipedia or WebMD or whatever, and you can look at the benefits of vitamin D. And what a lot of companies will do is they will take that research on vitamin D as a whole, and say, vitamin D is great for you for these reasons. And they try to attach all of the benefits of vitamin D that they have for you as a person, and they attach it to their product. Vitamin D is good for you, and we sell vitamin D, ergo, you're going to get benefit from our vitamin D. Whereas Thorne, we do our testing on our vitamin D, right? So there are the same benefits that vitamin D is going to give you that you read about, but with our vitamin D, our research is around the quality, the purity, the potency, the absorbability, so that when you're looking at these vitamin Ds now, through the same lens, they're vastly different, because you have one over here that is really poor quality, low quality, that is trying to ride the coattails of the industry research or the medical research on vitamin D. And then you've got a other company over here that's doing research on their own products, and the things that you're reading on the label about those products and the benefits that a vitamin D would give you, is now, you've got to look at that through a different lens, because we kind of do things differently. So there's a lot of this kind of like maneuvering and smoke and mirrors and things that try to trick you into taking their product, because they're using methods to kind of validate or elevate their brand or their product, that it's really shady in the way that they're doing it. And the other piece of this is, the majority of these companies use a third-party manufacturer. You were touching on this a little bit earlier, where they may be having their product manufactured in the same place that 20 other companies are getting their products manufactured. So that's where that cross-contamination takes place, because they're not cleaning the machines well enough. Whereas Thorne, we manufacture in our own plant, and there's not a single product, not a single ingredient that comes into our facility that's on the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency's prohibited substance list. So when you start with something that is not on the list, the chances of cross-contamination are about zero. Even with that, for every hour of production that we do, we spend 12 hours cleaning the machine, because even though it's not a banned substance thing, if you have a magnesium product and then you're buying let's just say a creatine product, or a vitamin D product, well, you don't want your vitamin D to have trace elements of other products that you don't want and you don't necessarily need. So it's a level of quality that I just have never seen before with any other company, out there who manufactures in the sports space. Now, there are others out there that do a good job in the medical space. Thorne is a rarity, because we play in the medical space. We also play in the sports space, and our competitors are either one or the other. They're either in the medical space or they're in the sports space, but there's nobody that kind of crosses both lines, plays in both areas as effectively as we do at Thorne.
That's incredible. That's an incredible point as well. And I know you were a major part of that. So we'll talk about that too. Before we get there, you mentioned to me, we had an earlier conversation, me and Wes, about the QC process and who has final say of certain products getting released. And forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, Wes, but I think you said something about that there's a higher veto power over the CEO, the quality department has, for certain products getting passed through. Am I saying that correctly? Or
yes. So our head, and it's kind of written into our standard operating procedures, right? So our head of quality control, quality assurance has veto power over the CEO. So as an example, and this would never happen, but I'll just give you a wild example. Let's say that we produced a product, and the testing of that product showed that the purity and potency was somewhere around 70%. We would not put that on the market. So if we had a CEO that was just kind of really interested in just making money, they may say, hey, go ahead and go forward with that. I don't care that it's only at a 70% purity and potency level. We need to kind of get this product out there because it's a hot product, and we want to kind of capitalize on that. Our head of quality control and quality assurance can say, sorry, we're not doing that because it does not meet Thorne standards. Our quality control, quality assurance, and purity and potency, we're up in the in the 90s, the high 90s. And it's like, because if it's not meeting that level, she can overrule the CEO. And I don't think that kind of process exists in other companies that are out there on the market. But
No,
it's done
incredible.
in a way, right, to kind of maintain the quality, maintain our reputation, and not just have somebody at the leadership level that just decides, well, we're going to do things differently now. I mean, this is our heritage. We've been around for 40 years now, and there's a reason we've been around for 40 years, and we want to continue to be around for 40 more. And the only way to do that is to kind of maintain the standards that we have implemented right from the onset, so that people can depend on us as a reliable company to do things the right way, because we actually care about the people that are putting our products in their bodies.
Yeah, it's an enormous factor, because not only do I think that this is the way that things should be done. I mean, when we're talking about things that are getting absorbed in your body, and if we're really talking about being healthy and being a wellness company and brand, it has always surprised me that we don't have these standards across the board, just as an industry standard. To be quite honest, hopefully we get there as an industry with Thorne setting the tone, because not only are we looking at professional athletes, to your point of, we don't want them to be digesting something unknowingly so that they can no longer compete in something that they've trained their entire lives for, which how sad is that for the individual, right? That we're doing them a disservice when they had nothing to do with this. But also as an individual in the general population that is just trying to take care of themselves and be preventative with their health and try to, improve their performance as well. You feel the difference. And so when we talk about, like, I've had examples of friends taking creatine as an example, right? Like, I'm a big believer in creatine. I started taking it probably 6-7 years ago, consistently with Thorne. I've had many people come up to me and tell me that they've tried creatine, for example, in the past with a different brand, other sources, and they experienced some adverse side effects. Feelings of, like, bloating, for example, is very common, or even with certain proteins, feeling also like a bloating feeling when you take this. Like, it just doesn't really burn clean. But going into a Thorne product, there's been none of that. It's been a very smooth transition, a little bit more of an energy feeling, kind of a smooth digestion process, if you will. And I have to imagine that has to do with the quality of the product itself. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And to that point, Joe, we also have a third party. We like, we like to kind of toot our own horns, but we also like others who aren't us to kind of toot our horns for us. And what we do a lot of third party stuff, right? And third party verification, third party certification, third party testing, this sort of stuff. But we also have a third party called Safety Call. And what that is a third party that basically, if you took a Thorne product and you had some sort of adverse effect from taking that product, we actually have a mechanism where you can report that. And we look at every one of those kind of adverse effects, because sometimes products don't sit right with people, and we investigate each and every one of those claims. And if it gets to a point where there's a certain product that we keep hearing claims about, we'll pull it from the market and really examine it and figure out what is going on. Now, the good and the bad of that. The good is, this is more safety for the consumer, and we want to make sure that people aren't having adverse effects. The bad part for Thorne is when people call up and say, "Gosh, I took your supplement and I had kind of this issue." That's all they say. They don't say that I was out for my birthday that night. I started drinking at 6 p.m. and drank all the way till midnight. Then we went to some fast food burger joint, and I had, four of these, greasy cheeseburgers, and then I went home and, oh gosh, and then I had some GI distress, after I took one of your capsules. And it's just like, so we don't get that whole backstory. All we get is, hey, I took your capsule and, it gave me diarrhea, or, it made me throw up or something like that. And I just wanted to kind of let you know. So we have to kind of filter through some of that. And that's why we're not, going to pull something off if we hear one report. But if there seems to be a pattern, of a certain product that things are going on, then we really, first of all, if it's one, we keep an eye on it. If it's multiple, then we will pull it and really examine, what in the world is going on here, and what could be causing this. And it could be there's a certain ingredient in there that, once we do a little bit of deeper dive on, it's just like, okay, well, this could potentially have this effect, on somebody. So let's find a different ingredient that is as effective, but may not have that side effect. So again, who puts standards in place or process in place where you can then, call a 1-800 number anonymously and report that you've had an adverse effect, to a supplement. It may happen a little bit more on the clinical side, the medical side with pharmaceuticals, but I don't know of many, if any, other in the nutritional supplement space that has that mechanism in place.
I don't either. I just, going back to an earlier point, I just don't think there's enough like education or awareness around the subject, even around who's regulating and overseeing the industry as a whole. There's a lot of just assumptions, to our earlier point, that it's taken care of. The last point on this with standards, Thorne is following. So you have the FDA regulation, you have your NSF certifications, but I remember hearing that Thorne is more following things that are even certifications that are outside of America, is more like what Australia is following, which is a higher standard.
Yes, we have a so it's called TGA, Therapeutic Goods Association, and they're out of Australia, and it's the Australian version of the FDA that is like, super stringent. I mean, because they are really more on the pharmaceutical side, but we have them testing and certifying our products. So our products are really pharmaceutical grade, right? Even though we're not making pharmaceutical products, our nutritional supplements are pharmaceutical grades, and we're the only supplement company, to my knowledge, that has all three levels of TGA certification, out of Australia. And again, these certifications are expensive. They are, they're really a pain to do, which is why many don't do it. I can make as much money or more by not certifying anything and not having these kind of quality checks and balances in place, because we count on the consumer. They count on the consumer not being knowledgeable enough to know the difference. But we do the things that we really don't have to, and we do them at a level that is really unparalleled. And again, it really comes down to, we care about the people that are putting our products in their body. So when you look at and hold a mirror up to Thorne, the things that we're doing, the dollars that we're spending, the resources that we're committing, to make sure that heritage that we started with, from the very beginning of making the best quality supplements in the world, that we maintain that mantra, that ethos, and that permeates throughout our entire company. I mean, if you ever get the chance to swing through South Carolina, where our manufacturing plant is now, I would encourage you, Joe, to kind of visit and kind of see with your own eyes, things like, even the factory floor, the manufacturing floor is one thing, and the cleanliness, that's in there. But even just the office areas, right, where every surface, doorknobs and window seals, they are wiped down 3 times a day. There's the antimicrobial soap and hand sanitizer. I mean, it is like such a sterile environment from just a work area, let alone the manufacturing area. It's the way that things should be done. And even as an athlete, I had no idea about this stuff either. I had no idea about quality. The way that I went about things is I had a group of supplements that I would take, right? And I would take those supplements. I would go to competition. I would get a drug test done. And if I passed that drug test, what I would do is never deviate from that set of supplements that I was taking.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea that from batch to batch, they could change. I had no idea that they could potentially be cross-contamination based on the manufacturing process.
Yeah.
I was very, ignorant to that whole process as well. And I thought I was doing this to protect myself. And I thought I was doing things that were pretty extreme to make sure that I was safe. And I really wasn't being very smart about this at all. But again, there was no guidance. There was really no help. You were just kind of left on, to your own devices to figure this stuff out. And what I wanted to do was to be a champion for, and basically to have the Olympic and Paralympic Committee be a champion for the athletes in this supplement space. And Thorne, like I said, just very fortuitously came into my life, and we were able to I think kind of do something even more special than they were already doing, but really again provide that peace of mind for the athletes. And much earlier you talked about kind of my goal in kind of helping athletes, and that's what I was doing through my work there at the committee. And after the Rio Olympic Games in 2016, Thorne came to me and said, look, we're really going to make this push into sport, and we want you to come and help lead the charge in the sport. So I jumped at the opportunity, because now this was an opportunity for me to almost have my singular focus be preaching the gospel and spreading the word to athletes that, hey, you know what, there is a beacon out there for you. There is a place that you can go that you can have peace of mind. And if it's something that I'm going to put my name behind and my name on, rest assured, you can trust this process. You can trust this company. So I've been here now for almost 8 years. I'm going into my 8th year, and I just love this company. I love coming to work every day and being able to be a solution for athletes who are still out there, kind of wandering the minefield blindfolded. To see their eyes light up and their face light up when you introduce them to this, and the happiness that they have, and again, the peace of mind that they get. That is something that is so enriching and fulfilling to me, and what really makes me excited to kind of wake up and come to work every day.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have made tremendous strides, I would say, in the industry too, even in just a few short years of going from Thorne being such a clinical, as you mentioned, more medical practice, going into working with athletes, and you see that transition happening much more now. And I'm curious, in that transition and over the most recent years, what are some of the things that you've noticed in the industry changing as it comes to supplements among athletes, and some of the priorities that Thorne has maybe been focused on the last few years, specifically for athletes?
Yeah, some of the things that athletes are getting a little bit more savvy, right? And they know to look for, the NF certification. Now, I think that in many regards, Thorne kind of opened the door for some of these other supplement companies to come along. So, as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. So we kind of opened the door and kind of made, because there was, to my knowledge, there wasn't a single NGB that had a nutritional supplement sponsor, right? They wanted nothing to do with supplements. When Thorne came in and we told our story and we kind of shared what we were doing, then supplements became a little bit more acceptable. But what we did, because we were doing things at the level that we were doing things, we had forced others to kind of step up their game, maybe not so much from the quality standpoint, but at a minimum, they had to be NSF certifying their products, right? Because the athletes have been taught, look for that certification. That's the only thing that guarantees that there's no banned substances in them. Now, nobody does it at the level that we do, and with the wide range of products. We've got nearly 30 products that we do, because it is expensive, it is cumbersome, it is very, very difficult to go through this process. But some companies will have one or two product, because if they want to play in this space, they know they have to have that certification. The difference is, what they try to do is then gain this halo effect by certifying one or two products and saying, well, these are clean, therefore you can kind of trust everything else that we're doing. And athletes need to make sure that they don't get caught in that trap, because it's nonsense. Just because you're certifying one or two doesn't give you a pass with all your other products, which is why at Thorne we really emphasize the NSF certification, and we've got nearly 30 products that athletes can choose from. And we continue as demand calls for it, and athletes come to us and say, hey, well, why don't you have a NS certified this, NSF certified that? If there's a case for that, then we continue to kind of certify more and more products, because again, we want to be the leader in this space. And we hope that by being the leader, we force others to kind of up their game, at least at some level, right? Because at the end of the day, this is really all about protecting the athletes and keeping them safe.
Yeah. And just elevating that standard across the industry, I think would be a tremendous goal. And Thorne seems to be obviously doing that, leading the way in that, in that charge. And I'm curious too, Wes, you went to, you said a point earlier that I'm not sure if you're going to remember all the specifics on this, but I had to ask this. You mentioned that when you were on the Olympic committee, that you worked with a registered dietitian to recommend about 12 supplements that athletes were focused on, that they identified deficiencies with among these athletes. I'm curious if you remember some of what those may be, because as we get into supplementation, just the role of supplements, and now just thinking about performance, kind of pivoting a little bit to the role of supplements in a routine. What were some of those deficiencies that were noticed among athletes, and some supplements that help them address it?
Well, you can look at the basics, right? So there's multivitamin, there's fish oil, there's whey protein, there's creatine, there's aminos. So there's some basics like that were on there. But then you would be shocked at seeing how many athletes are vitamin D deficient, or even if they're not, they're suboptimal, let's call it. Some are deficient, many are suboptimal, and this goes basically for much of the population. So there are different vitamins and nutrients, that minerals and things of that nature that that are just kind of like in your everyday. Like we look at this through the lens of human performance, and a lot of people are like, oh gosh, all these sports supplements. Well, I'm not an athlete; they're not for me. But what we do is we look at performance through the lens of a human being. So it's about human performance, and that covers you if you're trying to win an Olympic medal or a world championship in a particular sport. But it also covers you that if you just want to be the a great parent, or you want to be able to get down on the ground and play with your grandkids, or you enjoy gardening or hiking, and it allows you. So performance can be measured and attributed to a bunch of different things, right? Because everything that we do in our life, there's a biological cost to that, right? And that's one of the things that one of our dietitians at Thorne, says all the time. There's a biological cost to everything, whether you are an athlete, whether you just kind of go to work every day, whether you are a laborer and have a blue collar, or you're chasing kids around all day, as a parent. There's a biological cost to everything. So what we do is we focus kind of on the human side of performance. Can we get you to the point where you are functioning just in your everyday walking around at the highest level possible? Then if you are an athlete or you are doing something, beyond that, now you at least have a jumping off point that is much higher than it would have been otherwise. So it's really about kind of looking at those products that address the kind of the human side of human performance, Joe. Like I said, the multivitamins and things of that nature that get you to a point where you're at a much higher baseline level, that then when you're throwing the training and competition in on top of that, how are you fueling? How are you recovering? How is your body kind of responding from those stimuli and the biological cost that is being extracted kind of from you on a daily basis. So it was a lot of those kind of even hydration, right? How are electrolyte replacement. So it was those type of elements, making sure that, look, we want to support you on the human side first and foremost, because you hear athletes talk about all the time. I'm trying to find that extra 1%. I'm trying to find that extra 0.5% to really put me over the edge. Yeah. Well, if every day you're walking around at 68%, the extra 1% really isn't going to help you that much. But if from a human being and a human performance standpoint, we get you performing, in the 90th, percent as a human being walking around. Now all of a sudden, you have a higher likelihood of having that extra 1% that you're looking for on the field of play actually having an impact on you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the importance of addressing the deficiencies, and you mentioned vitamin D, and that hit home for me, Wes, because I recently just got some blood work done, and I've always kind of operated on feel a little bit, understanding my body. But to your point, getting some blood work done to understand really what's going on under the hood, I noticed that I, to your point, had suboptimal vitamin D levels. And so I just started incorporating that into my supplement routine along with like some multivitamins. But I think that's so important to understand when we talk about the role of supplements and personalizing too, that Yep. There are probably some general recommendations. What comes to mind for me is like a whey protein, a creatine, but really it comes down to the individual. And I was always taught when I worked with a dietitian that the role of supplements is truly to address deficiencies that you are not able to hit or address on your own with proper nutrition through whole foods, hydration, your own recovery, your own exercise training. These are true deficiencies that you just need that extra boost help with. But aside from that, it's very individual, which I'm going to be diving into, by the way, the gut health test with Thorne to get a little bit of a deeper dive to do exactly that, to uncover that as well.
So I'm excited about that. That's great. And when you look at this, I mean, and again, if you're not, testing is always, in my eyes, the best. And I'm not here, to kind of say that supplements are the end all be all. When you look at the word supplement, what does that mean? It supplements, right? Areas that you have gaps in, right? And weaknesses. So, and I was just with a friend of mine, a couple of days ago. He's like, yeah, I did, my work, and I had vitamin D, deficiency. And he's just like, I can get what I can get out of my diet, but I don't drink milk. I don't do this. I don't do that, because my diet is like this. And he's like, so it's very easy and it's simple for me to just kind of add this vitamin D to my routine so that I can feel better, have more energy, and not have that deficiency that exists. So it really, I mean, there's some general things, like I said, a daily multivitamin, whatever. Those are all going to be great for you. But really, when you're looking at your health, you really have to kind of take the bull by the horns a little bit. Get your annual blood work, or ask the doctor to order some blood work for you, so you can really understand what it is that you're dealing with. Because you're right, it is about that personalization. What I take and what I need is going to be different than what you take and what you need. But I don't know that unless I am, kind of looking at those blood markers and seeing, areas that I can improve in that are going to help me
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel better and help support my overall health. So that's where the personalization kind of comes in. It's like, it's not this kind of blanket approach where everybody just kind of take this. It's like, if you don't need to take one of these supplements, then we don't want you to take the supplement. What we want you to do is to kind of find that out and kind of take that test. And yeah, we do have some at-home testing kits that you can do to kind of look at different things. But that really helps tell a story for you so that you can understand what it is that you need as an individual. And Thorne, we just want to be that company that is there to support you for whatever your needs are, wherever you are on your health journey, whatever kind of end of the spectrum that you're on. We want to be there to help support you with reliable, dependable, repeatable, high quality products that you can trust and depend on us for.
That's huge, Wes. That's huge. Honestly, that's what I, as a coach too, that's where I come from and where I try to practice is I want to provide my own solutions. Like I'm not trying to get hooked onto a product. And when we're talking about even our health, I'm not trying to rely on a healthcare system to take care of my health. I'm trying to take full ownership and accountability. And then if you need to, if there's deficiencies, you go to the right place where, it's a trusted source so you can get these things done and still maintain health. But, I just think that's an incredible point right there.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned healthcare, and when you look at our healthcare, it's more about care and less about health, right?
Yeah.
So it's the focus is on taking care of you when you get sick, and what most people don't do is really attack the health side, which is the side that is on the preventative side, so that you don't get sick in the first place. So when you look at even when you go to your doctor and I had some health issues going on where my values were going the wrong direction, but they were still within the normal kind of ranges. So the doctor didn't want to do anything. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm feeling terrible. We can see that my numbers are going the wrong direction, even though we're still in the normal ranges. Within another year, I'm going to be outside of the normal range. And the response was, well, we're going to wait till you get outside of that normal range before we actually do anything about it, right? So it's the focus on the care part and not on the health part or the preventative side. So it's like,
Right.
well, why would I wait another year of feeling like crap for my values to kind of break out of that range, and then you say, oh, okay, now I want to prescribe some medication for you to kind of get that back into range. It just doesn't even make sense when you stop and think about it. So
No.
you being kind of your the CEO of your own health is what you need to be. And that's another phrase one of our dietitians uses. Be the CEO of your own health and understand what's going on. People do more research on cell phones that they're going to buy or a car that they're going to buy than they do, kind of their own health. So if you can really kind of dig in there and take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and address, okay, I see these values are kind of out of whack, out of range, and that may be why I'm feeling bad. Well, address that and address it before you get to the point where the care part comes in, and now you're on prescription drugs to try and fix a problem that you could have addressed, months ago, simply by maybe changing your diet, adding some supplements to your routine, or switching up your lifestyle a little bit. So it just kind of drives me crazy, and that's where Thorne wants to live, right? On that preventative side. We want to help support your health and your wellness journey before. We don't want you to get sick. And if we can support you in that way, and you couple that with a good diet, you're coupling that with exercise, you're coupling that with your lifestyle and the way that you're living. Now all of a sudden, you're going to feel better, because all too often people normalize feeling terrible. I wake up every day, I feel like crap, my joints hurt, and they normalize that. I guess that's just my life. My parents were like that,
old.
my grandparents were like that. I guess
Yep.
I'm destined to be like that. And it's total nonsense. You don't have to kind of follow in those footsteps. And what we're trying to encourage people to do is to create a new normal for themselves. And that new normal is, I feel great today, and you know what? I can feel better tomorrow than I did today. And I can feel better today than I did yesterday. That's the new normal that we believe people can create for themselves. But it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of commitment. It takes a little bit of time for you to kind of dive in a little bit deeper into your own health, because nobody's going to look after your health but you. And you've got to be this kind of self-made health advocate for yourself, and take the time, invest the time, and realize that you are worth that investment. You're worthy of that investment, because what happens on the back end of that, you don't want to get to. You don't want to get to a place where you can't do the things that you enjoy, doing every day. And that, again, requires a commitment from you up front to really take control of your own health and well-being.
Wes, I couldn't have said it any better. Any better. I just, the system is reactive. I came from the healthcare space, and I was in there for 10 years, and just seeing how we treat people, that I always wanted to go into a doctor's office and get treated more for how to optimize my health.
Yeah.
The same way that I go to a gym or that I go get blood work done. It's not to say find something wrong with me. It's to say you are healthy, and here are some things that we can do better, that we can tighten up, versus waiting for things to go wrong. And then we're just patching things up on the back end. And the argument, to your point, is why would we not want to do everything up front to prevent us from even getting there in the first place? Like waiting for the car to crash. Let's just take care of it up front.
That's right. And so many people really, they look to their doctors as the ultimate authority, and they just kind of, first of all, the amount of time that you spend with your doc, I mean, they're churning people out. But you have to be able to respectfully kind of challenge them, and not just kind of kind of sit and take what they give you. It's got to be a two-way situation where you're letting them know what your goals are, and involving them on helping you get to your goals. I'm not just here for you to kind of read over my blood reports and pat me on the back and say, hey, you're doing good. Keep up the good work. If there are things that you want to accomplish, and a place that you want to be from a health standpoint, you've got to ask those questions, and you've got to say, how can you help me get here? And if you have doctors who aren't willing to do that with you, then you should find a different doctor, one that's going to walk beside you on your health journey, and not be one that is just like, well, I'll be here for you when you get sick. That's not what you want. You want to be able to have that conversation about how to optimize. And, you want them to be a part of that journey. And like I said, if they don't want to be a part of that journey, then maybe you should find a different doctor who's a little bit more progressive in their thinking, and who want to kind of walk beside you on that journey.
Amen to that, Wes. Amen to that. Wes, let's ask one last question.
Sure.
As I think you are clearly a man of infinite wisdom, my friend. What would be some closing thoughts, maybe a word of advice that you would give to a young weightlifter just starting their journey, looking to get into lifting for the long run? And maybe it's a piece of advice that you would offer your younger self. What would that be?
Yeah, it's a couple things really. First of all, take care of those little things, right? I was notorious for, hey, if I felt good, I didn't do any of the no icing, no stretching, no, because I was young and strong, and I felt good, and eventually that catches up with you. So really taking care of the little things, like really, kind of working on your core, making sure that you're doing the things to recover properly, that you're doing things to warm up properly, and really kind of taking care of yourself. And then really looking at it through the lens of, like, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you want to be kind of in this for the long haul, you have to be patient. A lot of people don't realize that when I was a junior level athlete, I never won a single national junior championship until my final year as a junior, where I was kind of the old at the upper age limit, where I was the kind of the oldest in the class. Before that, I would get second or third or fourth or whatever. And you have to be patient and be willing to take your lumps, and just know that that's kind of part of the journey, part of the learning process, the growing process, the development process, and be willing to kind of take those lumps and stick with it. Because then when I went from the junior ranks to the senior ranks, that totally flipped, and I didn't lose a domestic competition for over a decade. And that was because, I learned how to lose. I learned how to respond to that, but I also knew that this was only going to be temporary, right? That I was on this kind of long journey, this long path. And it's really about having the patience and doing those little things, because a lot of times, just through attrition, you're going to outlast those who maybe were interested in just lifting a bunch of weight, right from the very beginning, and then they plateau, then they get injured, and then they're out of the sport. So if you want the long term, I think it was Stephen Covey that said, start with the end in mind, right? You define what your goal is going to be and how many years it's going to take to get there, and then you work your way back to where you are today, and do those kind of little things along the way that are going to kind of help you get there and keep you healthy and keep you progressing, so that you're not plateauing and that you're not that you're not getting injured. It's just a marathon, and if you're going to be in it for the long haul, just take care of your body, even when you feel like, hey, I feel fantastic. It's like that, probably more than any time, is the most important time to really address those little things, so that you can continue to feel great.
Wes, this has been incredible, man. Incredible. Thank you for joining us. I feel like I learned a tremendous amount today, just a great education, just a lot of wisdom too. So just thank you so much for the time and for the great talk today, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate you having me. And, I hope others kind of get something out of this. And again, it's really about, doing the work yourself, educating yourself, and, really understanding the things that you are putting in your body, and understanding what makes a good supplement company, what makes a good supplement, and taking a little bit of time to do that research, because you are worth it, and you don't want to put garbage in, right? You want to put the best of the best in your body, because you deserve it. I mean, why are you any different than a professional athlete, an Olympic athlete, just because, you may work in a warehouse and drive a forklift, right? So everybody should just kind of love themselves and treat themselves like they are the elite of the elite, and they deserve, to have access to, the same level and the same quality of things that those who kind of put on a costume and get on TV and play a sport do every day. So I want people to take care of themselves and really kind of take ownership of their health.
Yeah, same, man. That's the entire thing. I mean, this is true healthcare to me, right? Like, you have our healthcare system, which we've gotten into, is more reactive, but like this to me, when we're talking about health, wellness, proper supplementation, eating well with whole foods, exercising and training, this is true healthcare. I think it's the highest form of self-respect, of self-love that you can give. And if anything, in this day and age, we can learn from elite athletes. We can learn from the best in the world. We got so much data and information, more than we ever have. And even if we are competing at the highest levels in the world that they are on the world stage, we can certainly learn a lot from athletes like yourself on what to do in our daily lives so that we can live our best life pain-free.
And well, it's really interesting because when you see people at their pinnacle, what you don't see is the work that it took to get there, the years of commitment that it took to get there. And the one thing that I would say to people and really emphasize this is, kind of don't let this process overwhelm you. You can look at this and say, okay, I'm overweight, I'm out of shape, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they look at this in totality, and it becomes overwhelming, and then they don't do anything. So my advice would be, you know what? Start with just making a single small change, and then add another small change to that, and another small change. And then before you know it, when you've got 10 of these small changes, they actually add up to a big change. And that's really where you want to get to. Be patient. It's again, a marathon, not a sprint, in wherever you're at in your health journey. But, just take little pieces. I know that, I've had the opportunity to kind of be around some Navy SEALs, and they talk about, Hell Week and why people, they go up and ring that bell. And it's because they're looking at this and saying, my gosh, this was the first day and I've got, this much longer to go. I'm ringing out, I'm tapping out. And what they encourage you to do is, like, take the big and make it small, right? You can't think about the next week or the next 2 weeks. You've just got to concentrate on the next minute, right? They have to let us eat. They have to let us sleep. They have to let us, kind of do these things. And if you can just kind of get through the next minute or the next exercise or the next whatever, that's really where the focus should be. Because then when you get through that, before you know it, the day's over. And now you're up to the next day. And the same thing. You just kind of take these in small pieces. So take the big, make it small, little baby steps. That's all that's required, because, forward is forward, no matter how small the steps are. What we want you to do is to continue to move forward. So if you can just kind of do it in these little, baby step increments, that's better than standing still, and that's better than going backwards. So don't get overwhelmed by the process. Take it in bite-sized pieces. And if you have to do it minute by minute, do it. If it's hour by hour, do it. If it's day by day, do it. But don't look at kind of where you want to ultimately be and overwhelm yourself to convince yourself that I can't get there because it requires too much. All it takes is those kind of little baby steps added together. And eventually, you're going to get there if you stay committed.
Dude, we all need a little Wes in our life right now, man. You got me fired up again, man.
Perfect.
That's great advice. But, man, Wes, I honestly could talk to you all day. There's a lot more to tap into, but I want to thank you so much for being on the show again. We're going to continue some conversations coming up in the coming months with a couple others, experts from Thorne Health. We'll get into some different topics around supplementation. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about the blood work, getting more specific there, and even cognitive function, which I think is going to be a huge topic to cover. Something I'm really just super interested in, as research has been coming out on that. But Wes, thank you again so much. Just an incredible wealth of knowledge. Yeah, thanks for joining us on the show, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Appreciate you having me, and look forward to the next time.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
See you, bud.